Hey everybody, BTO Pro here, and today I'm going to tell you about the future. We've talked a lot about where things are heading for quite a while, and I think it's time I show you. So this is a talk titled HAXTheWeb 2020. I'll say as light as I can. It's a culmination of something I've been talking about and working on since about 2015. So we're getting close to the 5-year plan. So here we go. So I'm BTO Pro on a lot of social media platforms. I don't stop talking about technology and educational technology and how much this industry is screwed up. So stop what you're doing is what this picture is supposed to mean. As you can see, there's hacks in the clouds. I need you to go check some things out. So we work on some efforts in our team surrounding these platforms. You can go check out these hashtags and these websites in your own time. We'll put them in the notes. But if you drink enough coffee, yes, you too can get as ranty as I do. So before we start into anything real, please let it be known over and over that we are always looking for people to collaborate with, partner with, developers, grant writers, people that want to play with this stuff. We're really trying to get these ideas out there. And to spread and to actually enact change in our world. So please, if you can help us in any of these ways, we're always looking for help. So who are you, Brian? You can say. So I work on a platform and kind of a series of projects. They're grouped largely under this initiative called ELMS Learning Network. You can go to elmsln.org to learn more about it. If you're in education spaces, it's kind of known as a next generation digital learning environment. Which is a big fancy word for, hey, let's not put all of our material, all of our educational experiences into one system. Let's leverage solutions, very API-rich type of way of going about doing this. So I will say in advance, everything is not actually that awesome, and there might be some harsh realities ahead, or at least some pretty ranty ones. So to get to where we're going here with this hacks thing, you need to understand what authoring experience is. So authoring experience started as a reaction to Space Jam, obviously. No, this is one of the earliest websites on the internet that's from a corporation, and they keep it up for historical purposes. But this website probably cost a ton of money to make, right? It had no concept of authoring. When the web started, it was just whoever knows how to edit HTML and whoever can FTP it to a server. That was authoring, right? Extremely limiting. No one is able to participate in the web except those that understand the specification. And so all of us said, well, we need to make sure that we have this concept of contributors if we flash forward to today, right? And that those contributors are users of the web, right? Anyone that goes and hits edit on a form and they post content, they are a contributor to the experience, right? We've kind of heavily democratized the process. We have a lot more people participating in building the web, and that's really great. And you love the people that you give the systems to help democratize the web, right? Because if we didn't love them, why would we empower them in this way, right? You do love them because, yes, while better than Space Jam, not that much. So this is what we give people. We throw them into a space where they're given this kind of blob of content, and we say, here's a tool that looks like it was made in 1995, and hey, have at it, right? Because you've been empowered. You can click save, and I allowed you to upload an image and bold some text. And so, you know, if we want to actually go about uploading, I need to figure out what that means, right? Again, I do get a bit ranty in this area, but do realize that the majority of people that utilize this great democratization of the internet, it could come down to like not understanding the concept of uploading or an image source. Like, what does that mean? That wastes lots of your organization's time, right? These are all interfaces that need to be learned by people. And so all of us throughout history have tried to come up with, you know, how do we battle to get it so that this that's going on under there, that honestly some people are being trained in how to manipulate, how do we get that abstracted away from the user as much as possible? So there are actually whole conferences where there's tracks associated with accessibly creating HTML to present educational material. what a ridiculous concept. Why can't you just present educational material? So the world attempted to get a little bit nicer with this, right, as far as the way we build out authoring. So this would be, we have WordPress and we have a content area and we dump some stuff in there, and it has less options, right? It has a lot less options than that previous thing, and less is more in this case. And then we'll give people these. So these are shortcodes in a WordPress context. And so the idea was, well, HTML is hard, so if we abstract HTML and we give people these little snippet things, they can paste those snippet things in. And the snippet things will turn into HTML, and it is at least abstracting you away from knowing what HTML is, but it hasn't saved you from understanding what that gobbledygook is. Or this, right? So let's not just pick on Drupal. Lots of platforms do this, right? So this is a screenshot from the Drupal project, and this is all well and good at first, but as everyone knows, this technique has another name, and it's called total anarchy. The more you allow people to just start dumping in these shortcodes to be manipulating and touching HTML directly in its current form via this antiquated editor, the more anarchy will ensue. So another way that we've all attempted to constrain the anarchy is that we have these snippets. And the snippets, you could say come from, there's usually a button in an editor that says like templates or reusable area or whatever. And so then, we'll dump in an accordion, and then that'll solve the problem because they wanted that complex functionality. So they click the button, it gets dumped in. Hey, here's these accordion areas. And you say, oh, well, we at least saved on training heavily. Someone did have to make these up front, but really we're just kind of passing anarchy down the road, right? We still, as developers, don't know what's in that space. That space could be made inaccessible. It could be screwed up by something, unfortunately, as simple as trying to change that phrase that says tabbed interface example, right? Because under the hood, that's updating a header tag. And if the user is abstracted now and doesn't even understand what a header tag is, I actually feel like you've created more room for error here. So we tried to move radically away from HTML in our content management LMS worlds. And so we said, hey, well, if we just allow users to kind of build the page up as these block areas, or segment it using some, into paragraphs of text that people are working against, that this will effectively save us from the anarchy, right? Now this creates a different form of anarchy, I'll mention in a second here. But the form of anarchy that this creates can start to be illustrated here. So this is a Drupal initiative called layouts. And we want users to be able to break the page down into these block areas, and then on the side, drag and drop everything in. And that's really cool if you understand what a search form is, or help Drupal context or what have you. But all of these approaches now, we're getting into hyper-specific training around what ultimately is just placing HTML in the page. And so I'm sure that your CIO or IT manager uttered a phrase like this, right? If we just have a lot more training, then our material will look slightly better and have slightly higher accessibility scores, right? Like that's what you're going for, is hundreds of thousands of dollars of training, because this is the problem happening at scale at your organization, higher ed or otherwise. You're buying into all of these platforms that have radically different user experiences to largely just put HTML on the page. Yes, there's things that interface with databases, but a lot of systems you have just put HTML on the stinking page. So let's go away from that CIO technical person and say, maybe it's an administrator, right? That you're going to be able to say, hey, our students, they get a pretty good experience, and it's slightly better than everyone else because we put a ton of money into that training. And yeah, right? So there's kind of these degrees of separation here where things can fall apart. And so the real point is that people are trying to solve user experience. And I'm not knocking any of those projects that I was just, poking fun at. I've used all of them throughout the years, right? Everyone is attempting to make the editing, authoring, the participation with the web better for everyone. But particularly in the education space, although this could be true of any content management system audience, really, we're not unique. Like I said, the vast majority of us are trying to get stuff from point A to point B, but we all are acting like we are. If you work in a content management system context, you might say, oh, well, Drupal is this amazing way of creating fieldable entities and relational databases, and then you can pump it out onto the web as block areas that are HTML. And if it's WordPress, then you can make gorgeous content experiences that are HTML. And if it's, like a learning management system, you can make things that looked kind of like that Space Jam picture way back when, that looked terrible. But I mean, it's just HTML. So don't worry, there's hope coming though. And it's coming from WordPress, of all places. I know that's where you'd expect it if you follow these trends at all. And the hope is this. It's a brand new editing experience to attempt to compete with Wix and Squarespace. Now let's ignore the fact that I snarkily just said that, because that is largely where this is coming from, is how does the content management system remain relevant in an age where Wix and Squarespace can do it cheaper, faster, and let's ignore all the content lock-in associated with that. Those first two are going to win, right? So things like WordPress and Drupal look like dinosaurs by comparison to some of these newer editing experiences. And so Guttenberg is an attempt by the WordPress community to regain relevance. A lot of people probably think it is relevant, but when you think about how large the web open market is, it's pretty small. So what we should do then, obviously, if you're in Drupal or a learning management system, you should just adopt Guttenberg because it's pretty cool looking, right? And so this is a post about, hey, check it out. We made Guttenberg work in Drupal. We made a WordPress editor work in Drupal. Whatever could go wrong there? Well, let's look at what some of that output is under the hood. Now, granted, for your users, this will render just fine. They'll, in your content editors, they're going to click through, they're going to build out stuff pretty elegantly. It's not terrible. It does have, some flaws, everything does, but it's a really good idea. However, the issue that I have with this fundamentally comes down to this. So what you're looking at is the output from Guttenberg. It's called this this Gutenberg block system, if you will. And so they've effectively got these areas of the page that, if you want to think of them like back before, where it was these tokeny things, short codes, they've more or less weaponized that. And then they've taught the front end how to interpret things like this and unpack it and turn it into, nicer looking content experiences. And day one, you probably don't care a whole ton about this, right? From an accessibility perspective, there is all this comment stuff that, a screen reader will ignore if it's, without JavaScript or what have you, and the content is there, right? So that's not the primary concern here. The primary concern I have is that this is just kind of a new form of anarchy. Like, why semantically am I looking at the content of my website? And if I were to, view source, I'm going to see this WordPress -- Drupal block, blah, blah, blah. Like, this is two CMSs in one as far as the semantics of it. One CMS front end logic, and then another CMS injecting its back end logic into the front end. So this is a new form of anarchy, and the lock-in is included free of charge because I'm sure you'll be able to migrate off of this approach once you've adopted it. So, part of 2020 is we're skipping ahead in what we're looking at to say, if this takes off, and I'm sure it will in some areas, is this what's best for education? Like, is this the direction that we want to go? Is this the best way to propagate OER, for example, is to create it in this way that is highly platform locked? Or is this just create new monoliths? So don't worry, we don't really need to solve that question right now anyway, because almost everyone is turning off the Gutenberg editor when they got it in the upgrade and going back to the old one, which you can do for a while, as they say. But it's not that WordPress and Gutenberg aren't going to get more accessible, but it kind of isn't in it today. So you can't really use this right now. So this is why I feel it's a good time to have this conversation and take a breath and say, is this a direction we want to go, even if it is accessible? So what do we do? Like, can we do anything? It's a really impressive editing experience. We all know that we need to evolve or we're going to get washed over and replaced. with something else. System-wise, or honestly, our institutions are going to keep looking really antiquated just as a result of lack of high-quality editing tools. A lot of faculty are going to some of these third-party platforms just to stand their content up so it looks good. Why? Because it represents them. Why wouldn't they? Now, yes, you could say, well, there's policy reasons why you wouldn't. And I assure you, no one's violating a data policy out of like saying, I hate policy, like directly. They're doing it because it took 2 seconds to set up a Squarespace site or whatever. So, I mean, try and sell them on this, right? And try and sell your faculty, whoever, like, why should I use, and then fill in the blank learning technology of your choice, when I could just go to fill in the blank website tonight software that's really slick, when they get a quality authoring experience there, and they get to keep their own stuff, right? Why would I pour all this effort into Moodle, Sakai, WordPress if it's got that level of lock-in, if, you know, maybe I'm going to go work somewhere else in a few years and say, oh, maybe you could export your material, yeah, in some weird format that only ever works in a learning management system context. Because honestly, the LMS is a bit like a church. It's got this front door to get in, and then like everything's all well and good when you've kept within the confines of the building here. There is a bit of an orthodoxy associated with LMSs and the ways at which you get data in and out of them. And I would argue that orthodoxy actually kind of reminds me of this. So this is a cable box for all you youngins out there. A cable box. Now, you know, you might be watching this, and the cable industry might not exist. It's in such rapid decline. But the cable industry, ladies and gentlemen, is this fantastic industry that can get you a myriad of channels as long as you supply this really expensive box to effectively route things together. And we've even color-coded the plugs to help. So the cable box isn't a horrible thing, right? It does kind of give us this ability to plug all of these inputs in, and then our output, we plug it into a TV, and we see what's, you know, coming from a myriad of input sources. That's kind of, right? That's sort of what we've been describing here, is just having tools all over the place. Leverage APIs, you want to think of those as those wires, and those different connectivity standards, right? So our stuff, but like we're in this mess, if you will, at some level. We don't have the just like 3 or 4 cables tethering everything together. And some people have worked on, you know, certain API standards, things like LTI, to attempt to bring you this type of ease of use, right? But our stuff is already all over the place. And so yours most likely is too. And not all of those places, right? It could be conversations going on in Slack. It could be in Yammer. It could be in any number of locations that have varying levels of connectivity, whether it's LTI or otherwise. Maybe your material is in WordPress, and let's look forward for OER's sake, an OER publishing hub of some kind. Maybe use Pressbooks, which is, you know, like a hosted type of solution. Maybe you have stuff on a static website. Maybe it's some things are in a learning management system, or multiple, as we're finding some universities have. Some kind of course resource bin. The library is a physical place, right? There are a lot of places. If you start to think of NGDLE more as just kind of stuff all over the place, and we've got to get people from A to B, and the A is, hey, we're going to learn about this topic, and the B is knowledge gained about that topic, and the systems they need to interface with. So here's the proposal, a lot of which will be visual, some of which we're going to start here on the technical side. We can't just build the cable box as an industry. I would say that the LMS is attempting to be that cable box. It's saying, hey, if you just adopt LTI, we can all be friends. Hey, if you just do this one thing and constantly send your people back to me, we can be friends. Does that sound like a healthy relationship? And I'd say what we need to move towards is more like this device. So if you're not familiar, this is called a Roku box. Think of the cable box highly simplified, and that it's more for stitching together the internet. So I'd say it's almost like an Internet of Things box for your TV. It's not that, but to a lot of people, a lot of consumers, they might actually kind of view it that way, because note, for a long time I could go to Netflix. Netflix is a pretty old company at this point in the internet video game even. But what really started to have Netflix take off wasn't when I could get it on my computer or a dedicated box. It was when this box released and said, oh yeah, we can play Netflix. We can get you to Netflix quickly. And so Netflix takes what we've all come to expect as far as that cable box, right? That's an interface, and I plug it into my TV, and I can interface with it using what I'm used to looking at, like a remote. I have squares, and those squares represent brands and kind of just a normalized way of interfacing with these things. But yet it's not just the one channel, right? It's a hub to get access to the other things, right? I then click Netflix and I'm taken to the Netflix app or Hulu or PBS or whatever, right? And on a more technical level, the standards behind the scenes on Roku are open source, and so they have this whole open source library by which you can have your things show up here. So that in that regard, it is a little bit like LTI. However, the user is being taken into an experience, and it's all on the part of that vendor. In this case, the Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, to give you the experience that they want. Whereas like an LMS with LTI, it's the experience side is completely crafted by the LMS, and you're basically just getting these windows into specific applications. So what we're trying to do in pursuit of this, and making the Roku, if you will, for education, is we're trying to solve this problem. So on the one side, universities, colleges, academic institutions, they have a lot of knowledge silos, and we need to stitch them together. And so we then need to allow instructors, no matter what device they use, no matter where they're accessing things, which is important, kind of that Roku idea, right? I can get access to Netflix anywhere. I can plug a little Roku box in. That they can orchestrate that universe and publish things out anywhere that gets them to the learner as quickly as possible. So the learner accesses all of this from one space, or they have, like a phone app of the institution, and that they have the experience that's more or less orchestrating an unlimited number of data silos without always sending them off to any of them. Visualized another way, right? We've kind of got the faculty, staff, instructional design member kind of at the middle of the universe, and that they're using any device to author in any place, to publish out to any other space, also that students can be met where they are. All right, so how are you going to do that, right? Because that's so easy. It's just, look, it's just like a series of lines, right? And we've got some, it's an infographic, obviously. Print the money. But how are we going to do that? Well, if we just drink a lot of coffee, anything is possible. Dramatic pause. Okay, so our team has 4 developers. There's 4 people that work on Elms Learning Network, and we share 100% of our efforts. And you say, well, that's not related to the previous thing, but it is, because it's really hard to share 100% of your efforts, particularly when 2 of those members do work in conjunction in one college. I work in College of Arts and Architecture in the Office of Digital Learning, and 2 of those other members that work heavily on this project are in another college. They're in Eberly College of Science. So how is it you share 100% of your efforts if you have completely different goals in mind, right? We have different reporting structures. Well, we go where the web is heading, and then we have a headless dude with a question mark, obviously. So you say, wait, where what was heading? Because you didn't actually give me an answer. So we go where the web is heading. The web has adopted this specification that, believe me, if you're someone that says like, I don't know how any of this stuff's put together, but I know what HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are at a high level. I get it, you want to fall asleep on this, but this is really, really important that you have your people adopt this. You put this into RFPs, that things must be constructed in this way. This is really important for us to be able to get the NGDLE vision expressed by EDUCAUSE, that for everybody, not just for those of us with a development team, And so what this specification says is that if a browser vendor adopts these 4 things, they will have access to what is commonly known as web components. A web component effectively allows you to create your own HTML tag and teach any of these browsers how to interpret that tag in a standards compliant way. So what does that mean? It means that I can create a brand new HTML element, much like if you open up and inspect a document and you see H1 tags or paragraph tags, that we can create brand new HTML elements that we can share around with others and know with total certainty that the functionality of that tag is going to work for everybody. So you can go to webcomponents.org and you can see more about these, see how they work. But this presentation is less about that. It's less about the weeds of the Web Components standard. So we're going to jump off to webcomponents.org real quick and just look at one little example. So if we go to webcomponents.org, we'll see a community site like this. And there's plenty of community sites that have all kind of design assets on them. But on webcomponents.org, I can search for anything that people have published effectively to the registry here. It'd be helpful if I search for something. So I'll search for ElmsLN, which is our project team. And we'll see, here's a little loading thing. So if I go to here, we can look and see, here's all of the elements that we produced. And so the critical difference between web development of forever and this is that everything that's published here is compatible at a data layer. And so you can start to build some pretty advanced things and know semantically that I'm giving another person this capability. So in this case, a Wikipedia query. Like let's say we wanted our systems to query Wikipedia. Well, for your developers, for anyone that were to adopt these approaches, here's this almost new Lego brick, if you will. And so this Lego brick happens to allow you to query Wikipedia. Cool. So there's a brand new HTML tag that if your users reference or developers references, they have access to. Okay, you go back to the developer problem, right? So what the vision with using this, like how we end up getting the education's Roku, is through this standard. It's not directly the standard and like, hey, we're done. It's the things made possible because of this standard. So we've been using these for the last 2 years or so and working on an initiative within Elms Learning Network called HAX. And HAX is short for Headless Authoring Experience. So imagine if you were able to construct your own HTML tags, and with those tags you could start to add in new complex functionality. And that just like normal HTML tags, those tags could talk to each other and you could place one inside of another, right? Much like you could have a heading and a paragraph and they're inside of a div, and then that makes it appear that it's on the left side of the screen or what have you. Well, imagine that the tags that we make boil up to create a full-on authoring experience. Much like a WYSIWYG text editor that we showed before, right? And those are built out of a lot of JavaScript. But that JavaScript is very specific to where it's placed in that area. Developers have to do a lot of work to make sure that code all works in one place. The Web Components standard is isolated by design. So everything that you make is visually and code-based isolated, but then it's also highly semantic for when you go to use this. So anyway, what is HAX? So if you go to HAXTheWeb.org, you can learn more about this project. And it's kind of bending what you would traditionally expect out of HTML. So with HAX, I could hit edit on something, and I could view source. It would go back in time and see this is HTML looking stuff. This, you see here I have an H2, I have a P tag, another P tag, but then I have other tags in there, right? There's another heading. I have like a grid plate tag, and I have a A11Y GIF player tag, so that those tags and their functionality, might do this, right? So this is a GIF player. And a GIF player is a single tag that can just stop a GIF, and so that it doesn't autoplay, which is an accessibility issue. And so you can start to easily get into accessibility requirements being met with this. Or it could be like a whole video player. Like this is a really slick video player that has lots of configuration options, let you speed stuff up. This is a web component. You notice I said right? So this becomes a single web component that we can place on the interface. Or we can make a web component that visualizes, code in this place. Here's a little code sample. The whole interface of what you are seeing is made entirely out of web components. So these things on the side are web components. These buttons are web components. The little ripple inside of them is a web component. This banner that I hover over is a web component. These buttons are web components. And why that's important is that unlike any other time in web development, I can leverage that over and over again. And I can more or less infinitely scale what previously was just, hey, I have this capability. So what do I mean? Well, I mean, if I hit edit on this page, we go back to that view source, we'll do something a little silly. We'll view source on something that is view source, so we'll hit inspect. And I'll bring this over here. That code viewer is itself a web component. The loading sequence is a web component. And unlike before, where I would know how to make a code editor and I could copy and paste an example and I could utilize my company's way that we to solve that problem, I didn't actually make the code editor. I leveraged the code editor and the things that go into it, and I have the exact way that works. So this is actually by Microsoft. This is VS Code's primary editor, if you're familiar with that coding platform. But it's the actual code they wrote. It's called Monaco. And so it comes with all the accessibility enhancements, all the usability enhancements. You see it has this nice little mini map. Imagine I just got all of that by adding one tag to an interface as a developer. And then I knew it worked that way every time. So what HAX is HAX is a tag that understands the content that is sitting in this area of the page. And then if we think of the fact that these web components, while visual, right, while the funny meme of the dude taking his glasses off and there's more glasses there, what if it was more than that? Like what if we took that web component, right, that semantic piece of HTML that we know works everywhere and looks the same everywhere, and then we treated it like it was an API. So if I selected a meme, in this case, a meme has told HAX, not the other way around. Like HAX doesn't have support for memes, which is an important consideration. HAX knows how to edit a meme that sends it a message indicating how to talk to it. That's not something you could do with normal HTML, but it's something you can do with these tags and then be able to talk to them like they're their own API. So in this case, the meme tag has said, I am able to be resized. And if you're going to work on me, you need to change my settings, you should generate a form that looks like this. And I have something called top text. And on update, it updates. And then I have something called bottom text on the bottom, silly. So I hit update and it goes into the page. So that's HAX. It's the entire editing experience here, boiled up to a single tag, which means it can be integrated into other solutions rapidly. So if I want to take that full width image, move it around, open this, change the caption there, right? We've created a way by which the tag itself is telling us how to edit it. If we have a data layer, and we have a lot of things you can make already, and we're just going to keep adding more, and you could, if you're a developer, you could implement your own, but you probably, if you're watching this, you're just saying, what the heck is any of this, Brian? So let's say that you wanted to, let's serve some instructional purpose here. If it was a license, I wanted to supply a license to this work, and this is the HAXTheWeb demo video. The source for this, you can get it on HAXTheWeb.org. The license that I want to use is Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike. Get that logo, and the creator is, in this case, BTO Pro. So hit update, and now I've licensed my work. while talking through doing it. This is a 100% semantically accurate license. It's an accessible license because the screen reader will hit the, it's the word license, but it actually says license here. It has, in this case, HAXTheWeb demo by BTO Pro, licensed under Creative Commons Share Alike. That is the correct Share Alike license. If I went, oh, shoot, I didn't mean to do that. I meant for it to be that one instead. I update it. And what I'm doing fundamentally, if we look at the source, is Hax is just leveraging the fact that it knows what a license element is because license element told it how to edit it. And then it's just writing the HTML that could have been written by a developer, places it in the page. So I hit save. Now this won't update because this is a demo, so don't hit save here. But I would hit save and this would update and I'd have my changes. There's any number of other things we can add into Hax here. We could maybe use some of those templates like we did in the CK editor days. And maybe this template is a history of Elm's Learning Network and sends you a video that's highly accessible, can go full screen. That gives you a self-check, right? Because we want to quiz the students if they know, hey, no, false. Elm's LN is an NGDLE. Learn more about NGDLEs, right? That is itself its own web component. Now we can start to get into, pedagogy here, right? This is a web component that has been intentionally structured to provide a little learning activity, like a self-check. And so, how old is the Earth, right? And then I want it to be an Earth color. All right, we'll go lime. Let's make it the darker theme. That's hideous, but let's do this. And we'll do the request for more info. Might come from like weather.com or something. So that when I click this, I see the little more info, and it would go to weather.com, if you can see that link at the bottom. And then from there, I can update the alt text. In this case, this input field is a web component that's giving me feedback, saying, hey, alt data is required for everything except decoration images. And so it could be the cover of a laptop with some stickers on top. Right, hey, you passed our simple accessibility check. As it says, if I type the word image, it'll say, hey, you don't need to put the word image in there, right? So we can do some nice little things to try and help enforce better accessibility. The question to answer, 100 years old. And then it'd be like false. I'm not sure, but it's way more than 100. So that then when the student would click the reveal answer button, and they'd say, hey, oh, that's what the answer is, cool. Update, and now that's in the page. Right, so with Hax, I'm working on this, I'm editing these things, and I can, as a developer, I can add new tags, new HTML tags that will work anywhere, and that's important. Hax is not just for one platform. Some other things you can do, Hax are particularly interesting to education. I could put like a little stop note, like, a quiz is coming. And it might say, next week, I'll issue a pop quiz. If you saw this message, you'd know. Right, and I don't want it to be stop. Let's make it more of like a warning. And there we go. So we've got our little pop quiz notification, and that's just for the really good students who read to the bottom of the page. If it's a little multiple choice question, oh, that's not the answer. There we go. Let's try those. Check. Nope. There we go. It's everybody. Trick question. So I could clear the answers. Maybe I could hit edit. I could generate my own new question. I could take out my name as a correct answer, test it over here on the side, see that I got it right, do this, see that I got it wrong, clear the answers, hit update, and now I've updated that little multiple choice question. Again, like a self-check exercise sitting here. How many solutions provide really complex ways of achieving that? Okay, and then you'll be stuck in that platform. Now you could say, oh, well, you'll be stuck in, Hax in this case. However, what I'm doing is this is just writing these web components to the page. And so this multiple choice tag, so long as where you go, that you can teach that page how to visualize a multiple choice tag, you don't need HAX anymore. And we're putting these on content delivery networks and things to be able to render them. But so long as you can send someone the definition of how to present multiple choice in this case, you're effectively creating highly interactive material that's platform agnostic, as long as that definition is there. So some other fun things you can do with HAX, I can search and pull data in from elsewhere, right? So this is part of that Roku vision. I want to be able to access data from NASA, but not actually go to NASA. NASA has amazing image search capability. So if you're doing something about moon landings, that I could search and present that information to you in HAX. That's an awesome picture of those kids hugging a robot. And that HAX, because it's just a big old API on the front end, says, oh, you have an image, NASA, cool. Here's some different ways I can present images in this case. So if I wanted to make the image more of a testimonial, right? There is a testimonial with pulling data off of their API. The user testimonial, fly me to the moon. There we go. And kids and robots. The future is bright. That should be bright. Spell it right, Brian. And then there's that color picker from before. Let's make this like a deep orange. We can make it a darker color card or a light color card. Update. Okay, now we've got that little design element in there, right? And maybe this is the setup to talking about something. Maybe it's not NASA, maybe it's YouTube, and you want to search for a video about HAXTheWeb, because we have quite a few out there. Let's go to DrupalCon from the year before. You notice we get different items saying how they can present themselves. These happen to be the ones here, so I could present it as a QR code. Sure. I don't know anyone that uses QR codes, but in a non-ironic sense. But let's say you wanted to make that link into a QR code for a learning activity. Sure, there's a QR code that has correct alt metadata associated with it that is the title from YouTube. Update. I didn't need to understand how to make a QR code. I didn't need to understand how to write HTML. I know what a QR code is if I've ever seen one, if I'm a user in this case. But let's say I goofed up, I didn't mean a QR code. I could go under more, and I could at first duplicate it, because maybe I do want a QR code. Let's keep it normal size. Let's make it centered, and let's put a little heading above it, and we'll say access the link via image scanner or something, whatever that silly thing is. But that this one, I want it to be the actual media, the video. So I can use this transform to, and transform to does a mapping between the visual assets, because again, the visual assets have kind of formed this little mini API of this data on the page, and I can say, well, a QR code has a link and it has a title, and then I can kind of then go, well, what else is able to present a link or a title? So I could go, let's make it a video player. And so that found a match on the source part with youtube.com. And there's our web components talk from last year. Make it dark theme. Again, normalize color picker so that I have that nice light blue on there. And the title is Web Components Are the Future. If I would spell, update, and we'd put it in place there. Of course, I didn't update that one in this little live demo. So if I wanted to search Wikipedia as an educator, we'll search for light bulb. Hopefully, more and more people start having that moment about what it is we're talking about. Electric light, I'm going to put that in. You can see I can even have a component that leverages other components. There's that share-alike attribution element that's inside of our Wikipedia article. So I just searched Wikipedia and then correctly cited it and put it in the page. That's a crazy amount of work, typically, right? If it was, perhaps I wanted to search Flickr for sunlight. And, that's a nice picture of sunlight that's, open to anyone to do. I could make it that meme again, or maybe I just full width. Hey, there's the morning sunlight, right? And then we put that there, and it's this nice, close cap to the picture, right? If I can design and I can create fluidly, I'm going to be more incentivized to create more engaging experiences for my learners, right? Like this is really hard to do in HTML. A collapse is really hard to do, even with a template. A meme and silly jokes. I'm not going to go make a meme. That takes a lot of effort to do normally. It has to be seamless. And so, you know, we could even get into like layouts where I'd say like, hey, I've got, you know, these 4 columns I want to put down, and I want to start uploading images or whatever. But so this is all there on the HAXTheWeb.org site. You can learn all about the project, all about how this stuff works and, you know, constructed and APIs and blah, blah, blah. But the important thing, really important, is the solutions area. So I mentioned before, this is not tied to us. We're not tying you to our platform per se. Now prove it. So this is Drupal 6. Perhaps you've seen it before. It's ugly and antiquated. It's, you know, like 10 plus years old. But because all of my assets are delivered on the front end, I can teach Drupal how to understand HAX pretty easily. So that I have that meme there, and then I could search, and now I don't have all the sources of before because I haven't hooked them up. But you could imagine the other parts of your organization, you know, Box, Dropbox, Google Drive, Office 365, whatever, showing up as these things. You'd say like, oh yeah, I want to embed that document here, right? That's the answer that or the question you're trying to answer more or less. You know, that I could search for Drupal in this case because I'm writing on a Drupal page, and I have the same user experience, right? I didn't have to learn how to work with and edit content in Drupal 6 in this case. Once I've learned how to do HAX on that static site, now I can do it in my Drupal site. I hit save. It says, hey, you saved. I go back to view the page, and there we go. There's some little funny memes with solar flares and things, and there's my Drupal article added. But again, we're decoupled. Drupal 6 is 10 years ago technology that I taught how to use this rather quickly. Drupal 7 is out of date, but not quite as much. Right? There's a lot of Drupal 7 hanging around. So I can do the same thing. I teach Drupal 7. Hey, here's how to do a testimonial card like we saw before, and now I have a testimonial rendered the same way, even though it's on a different site in this case. Let's say I wanted to add something, so I could click add, and I could either drop in a URL or I could upload a picture. Say, where do you want to upload it? The internal file system. Okay, I uploaded. How do I want to present that? So I want to present it as a meme, and say like, okay, so that I can meme a photo of myself, put it in place, maybe scale it a little bit, put it in the center, go into layouts. Let's make a 33, 33, 33, which is mobile responsive, right? The layout just detected it doesn't have enough space in order to achieve that. We can make these placeholders a little bit smaller because I don't want them to end up being that ridiculous. And then I could just take that and drop it into the placeholder and place it up there. In this case, as a self-check. Are you for real? And then the answer is clearly going to be, you have no idea. And then I'd make that the darker theme to invert the colors a little bit. All right, maybe not. Keep that. Ugh, amber, that is. Whew, do some gross things with that. We'll just set it back to normal. Update, cool. There's the picture of me that's in there. I could grab another photo, throw it up. And so the idea, you know, put that in as a normal HTML image or whatever, put in another one, right? I am fluidly uploading media, interfacing with this website as a content contributor, and I don't have to think necessarily to be able to hit save, go back and view the page and see all of the things that I just added in there. Right, HAX is in the sky, the images are uploaded. Again, that's then in Drupal 7. So going through history, if I had the same authoring experience, and if that authoring experience was the thing that is the best authoring experience imaginable, now it won't matter. It'll be painless when I move to Drupal 8 in this case, and someone opens up a page and needs to edit it in some way. It will be painless if I move to other systems, right? We won't say, well, crap, how do we style and how do we migrate our material between these things? And if you're an educator and you are looking at me saying like, yeah, but I don't do that stuff. Yeah, but people in your organization do, and those big questions are why you can't have access to pretty things. They're why migrations fail, is because it typically is really hard to shift between these things. But because this video player tag is agnostic of where it's used, and because it ultimately, if I hit, had the view source button there, I didn't realize. If I open up view source, right, I see the same source there. If I just copied this, not that we want to go back to that age, but if I copy and paste it in here a second time, I could insert all of that material twice. It would be the same if I went to another website, like let's say, you know, let's make sure we prove that this can handle uploads in Drupal 8, because that is part of it. Upload it as a cover image, and I can put it in place, change the icon because I have an icon picker. There we go. So I've got that in place with my cover image. Hit save, and then in this case hit view, and now I've got my cover image in there. There it is. Okay. So got my cover image in there. I could click to learn more about whatever. Or I could take that content from before. Let's say we went to a different system entirely. In this case, this is Grav. Grav CMS is a very lightweight HTML-based, Markdown-based CMS. I could take that, whoops, I already have it there, view source, and I could take those pieces of media from the other site, and I could update the body, and there we go. Now, that didn't move the media, you know, that's underlying and associated with that, right? This is, you know, a remotely served piece of media, but you see the idea, right? I was able to just copy and paste that HTML. And so long as I can teach that system how to present the HTML, then I'm free. I'm free of that platform. The platform empowered me. In this case, you know, Drupal 8 helped me just present HTML on the internet. And then we as an organization moved to Grav, per se. And that migration shouldn't be painful for me. No matter who I am in the organization, faculty, staff, you know, web developer, whatever. If we were to move to Backdrop, which Backdrop is a different content management system, that there really shouldn't need to be training involved with some new system. I should just be able to click, you know, Hax mode in this case, and edit that section of the page, delete that paragraph, remove this. I think there we go, make the window a little bit bigger. If it's, you know, getting into some rather advanced use cases of things we can do, right? I showed images. So this is, you can see it says demo.csv. I'm going to upload a CSV file. It's going to save in the internal file system. And then in this case, Hax said, oh, well, only one thing claims to be able to handle CSV files that you currently have access to. And it's this thing called LRN table. So this is 100% accessible, even down to the description. And so I just added a data table to a website that is, you know, has some responsive capabilities in there, has a button that the users could click and download and get the underlying file back out. And it is accessibly presenting all of the material that was found in that CSV file. If you've ever had to make a table and put it on the internet before, and do it over and over again by hand, then you would know the pain that is most users that are trapped in learning management systems. So that one feature right there could save hours of a person's time per week sometimes. These are not trivial operations. That we've created a heuristic by which we can solve these problems, solve any of these UX problems. Right, so there it is, and it's rendered there. It would render anywhere. So where we're really going with all of this is, you know, in part, right, it is about those other systems that have access to. We're working on a desktop app simultaneously, because if we just make the Hax platform work well, all it really is doing is saving HTML back to whatever that system is. And so by working on that front-end technology, we're improving the potential front-end technology and authoring experience for any platform that integrates with Hax. So the more integrations we get, right, we don't have to focus on those integration points. We focus on the authoring experience and the tool sets available to it and the usability of that solution. So this is a little more bleeding edge than Hax. We are using Hax for course development in Elm's Learning Network. which is Drupal based. But so this is a platform called HAXcms. And the idea with HAXcms is that you're basically managing these little microsites. And so I could click to access this site, and you'd see I have a page that pops up, and then there's a little editing tool set here. This is what the HAXTheWeb website is running off of. And so that I could utilize the capabilities that have been illustrated in this video to make a new website and hit save. There we go, I've got my page reflected, but I could also just start to build the whole outline in this. And again, entirely on the front end. So instead of new page, let's envision this as lesson 1. And then under lesson 1, there'd be like introduction to the course, where we're going this semester, my name, how much I love teaching, whatever it is. And then I'm using the keyboard entirely to just go through these, and it might be like topic 1, I don't even want to do a topic there. I'll show you one in a second. So I could do topic 1, and it'd be like introduction, page 2, page 3, and generally by page 4, it's going to be like experiment, and then we're going to have a wrap up. And then lesson 2 is going to have like, there's going to be, no, I don't want to write topic, right? That effort again. I don't like having to do that much effort. Why can't I just copy and paste and start to build this out even further? So let's say that's topic 1, 2, 3. You know, most of my, if I have decent enough instructional design concepts in this, these are going to generally be the same. Let's say that's lesson 1 and 2 and then 3, and then there's only a lesson 4 in this course, and we'll just do lesson 4 there. That when I would hit save, there we go. That it actually took all of what happened right there. Right, I'm just using the keyboard. I'm typing in an area, kind of doing what you could do to outline and prototype a concept in Microsoft Word, if you will. But let's look at what just happened underneath. So underneath the hood, when I hit save there, it updated one file. There's this site.json, which is powering this outline, has the titles of these things, which then, you know, these can be clicked through. I can go to the Why I Love Teaching page and what have you. But the other thing it did is that it created pages under here. And so those pages, you know, to get slightly technical here, those pages are physical HTML files. They're sitting on the file system. And then what you're seeing here is this is a Git GUI, which visualizes GitHub made information. Every time I save a page, and we'll go to one and do that, but every time that I would save a page, it's going to go and it's going to actually update the content of whatever that is. So that if I were to take this page and dump a whole bunch of placeholders in and hit save with my placeholders, you would see, hey, this is the data that was just changed underneath. And so again, this is, you know, work in progress. You can see there is some little goofiness here that we're working through. But that this is the promise of a completely decoupled, disconnected, headless platform. That I could take all of this information, if I wanted to add pages and delete pages, there's really very minimal operations going on with that. If I needed to upload that image of me again, that I could put it in place, and all I've really done is I've placed a file in a files directory right here, and then that I could hit save, and it would have, you know, have that uploaded there, so that I could present my material however I need to. That I could go and, you know, perhaps say, because of web components, let's use a little bug icon, because I just experienced one, pink, and we're going to just make our course look like a simple blog, hit save, update one value, and now have the same authoring experience, but a completely different way of presenting that material, right? So this is now my, you know, now you see it, now you don't, little experiment site here. So why do platforms need to be different? This is what I'm trying to get at. Why does the experience with which you author have to be so tied to a platform when most of it is just presenting HTML to people? All right, these are those pages. They're flat in this case. Well, why are they flat? Well, because it's a blog. And everyone knows that a blog is completely different, even though it's really not. It's just like a series of posts in order, and then you would have some way of editing them, right? So this is how we've been editing the HAXTheWeb documentation site. It's some other little experiments that I'm messing with. But when you go and see content on the HAXTheWeb site, you're actually seeing a HAXcms site that's been modified. You can't save on the HAXTheWeb site, and I can because this is on the back end. But then to get that site out to you so that you can see a new version of it, all I'm hitting is site details, and then down the page here there's a publish button. I need to move it up. There's a publish button, and if I hit this publish button, the site will be updated. Now in that case, it's updated on GitHub. But imagine if you published this to the place that students went and engaged with it. So you wanted to present your material as a blog, then do that. Or maybe you wanted to give them access to writing, doing studio-based instruction, what have you. That this platform and its ability to be disconnected from the design and yet have a powerful authoring and editing experience frees you up to be able to work on the thing that you actually want to do, which is teach your course, and not deal with technology, that it becomes seamless, not have to teach your students how to use technology in the same regard, right? If you had them using a HAX capable system. So with that, I am BTO Pro. I'm a little crazy because I drink a lot of coffee, and I believe that by 2020 we can radically reshape the web, and that's what we're setting out to do. Thanks for stopping by.